Arun with you this Thursday night. Welcome to the Pre-Ken. It's just gone 10 minutes past 8. Reason I'm laughing is my circle of men have arrived, and one of the members of the circle of men, Dan, turned up with my dinner this evening, and I've just been thoroughly enjoying that dinner, and I wasn't sure if it would be finished in time to do the segment. And instead of going, I shouldn't be stuffing my mouth, I said, Dan, do you just want to do the first bit of the show?
I was ready for it. I was ready. I was prepared.
That food was for all of us, by the way. Is he just
well, do you know what? I was going to get some cookies for everyone, but if you guys don't want the cookies, I'll be sat there eating them myself. So for
Mikey, whilst you're sat there with a smile on your face, right? I said, could anyone get me a snack because I forgot my dinner? And did you notice what he did? Right? Dan goes, yeah, sorted, mate. Sorted, right? Just absolutely sorted. I remember this time last week.
It wasn't even a snack, though, was it?
No.
It was a meal.
Oh, it was unbelievable. Everything, right? And I remember...
Over-deliver.
There was a brownie in there.
I just remember this time last week, we were talking about, expectations. And when I threw that out today, I went, Dan and Duncan are involved, so my expectations are really high. The week before, when I went, oh, Mikey, can you help me move with your van? Expectations are there. I'm just saying,
For the audience, when he said there, he made a low sign.
Thank you very much. Because
that didn't really go well on radio.
Well, thank you. I was getting critiqued. Do you know what? It's been quite a tough week for radio presenters, so I'd appreciate you giving me some slack tonight. So that is Frisco Boogie. Normally, I'd say his album is out right now, but I don't think it is. Okay. Rhythmical Mike, television star. How's the high life treating you after being on East Midlands today?
It's pretty good, mate. It's hard to walk down the street sometimes. I just want a bit of peace and quiet. I'm with my family, and can't give autographs to everybody. But
is that why you disguise as a road sign?
Yeah, he's wearing. He says road sign is because Mikey's wearing. Do you know what? I'm not even going to describe it. A very garish top, but I kind of like it.
Dare to be different.
Yeah, I liked it. Do you know? If I go back to 1989 when I wore a shell suit and I was a toddler. I loved it.
I know,
right?
I know.
Individuality.
I know.
Is that a word?
In its fine form.
Haters gonna hate, Mikey. Haters gonna hate.
Right. Okay. Can we simmer down? Can we regain some control? The man I want to bring in some control is Dan James. He's an online coach and mental health speaker. He's from the Prime Life Project podcast. He, if you want to inquire, you can go to Linktree. I can't do the rest of that. But there's loads going on. So I want to start this show tonight in a little bit of a different way by saying, Dan, you went to something last night. So I think this is the topic. It's got us all talking. So try and describe what you went to whilst remembering that you're on BBC Radio.
Okay.
Wow, what a task.
Yeah, what a task. I went to go see a neuroscientist discuss the potential benefits of psychedelics when it comes to mental health. And it was absolutely incredible, the way she explained it all and answering a lot of the questions that basically a lot of people were wondering. There was such a mixed bag of people that were there. There was clearly people that dabbled. There was clearly people that had never done it in their entire lives. And there was people that wanted to just know the science. And the lady, I think, was from somewhere in Europe, and she'd been in the field for 10 years researching it. And the way that she came across all the information was absolutely incredible, and it poses a lot of very promising questions when it comes to psychedelics and mental health, to the point where big pharmaceutical companies are actually trying to get involved in it as well. So that kind of tells you the potential things for it.
Now, interestingly, yesterday I was we had the TV on in the background after. But do you want to hear my country stuff, by the way? Do you want to hear my theme tune these days?
Go on then.
Okay.
He's gone country. Look at them boots. He's gone country. Country roads take me home. Moving to a place. Gonna eat a lot of peaches.
Oi, Verma, get off my land.
Yeah, we're doing that as I lean into my country life. Now, in the country cottage yesterday, there was a TV on in the background, and it actually had morning light, the morning show on BBC One on. And there was someone there talking about a study that had taken place. And if you go onto the BBC News website, yesterday, only 22 hours ago, there is an article which says magic mushroom drug can treat severe depression. Trial suggests. So we need to be really clear with what we're talking about here.
And she mentioned that literally yesterday. She brought up that study and said it literally just come out in the last few hours and basically discussed it.
So they've looked at it, and the short-term side effects could be frightening, and support must always be on hand, the researchers said. So this is already delicate, and we need to be delicate when we're on air talking about this, because there's no one saying this should happen. It's about a piece of research that came out yesterday, and Dan went to watch a show or a talk which was kind of on those
And
lines.
to be clear with that as well, she made it very, very clear that this is all done, and she says the best results with it is in a clinical setting. That's literally what she was saying, the fact of you're doing it in a very safe place with people waiting on you hand and foot. So, yeah, she wasn't talking about any other outside activities.
Because, again, this will lead on to kind of what I wanted to open this up to, because in this study, they said most people in the study have been severely depressed for more than a year and were aged around 40. We did a circle of men. We're both in our we're all in our mid-30s, apart from Frisco, who's in his 20s, right?
Nice. I'm in my 20s, dude.
Why do you look like you're 40?
Psychedelic life.
So I wanted to talk about this because at that age, that's almost in our catchment area. Do you know that we talk about men trying to talk? And we're talking here about people that are severely depressed and have been for some time. Now, if you've been severely depressed for over a year, it means you've been dealing with some stuff for over a year, probably a lot longer than that to get to that. So people are now looking at these studies and going, you know, is that where I've got to turn to? What should be, and I want to do this as a first point, if someone's feeling a little bit depressed, feeling a little bit down, there's these studies, you know, that's years away from wherever they're going to come. Duncan, what's the first thing someone should do if they start to feel that sort of way?
First of all, can I just put the caveat that this is, you know, a lot of this isn't professional advice.
Yeah.
This is opinion based.
Of course.
So just to put that out there.
It's out there.
Thank you. Do you know what? I think it's difficult because I think there is people that are genuinely suffer from depression, and then people have sad days and people have down days, which is natural. That's fine. If you get to the stage, I feel that you are genuinely worried about it and it is causing disruption to your life and maybe the way you are functioning and thinking, talk to people, but I still think you need to get professional help. I think it is about signposting, and it's about either, you know, contacting charities, and there's plenty of charities out there, or contacting your doctor. But I still feel that there is the case where, you know, some will just prescribe first and ask afterwards. So I think it is a case of go and talk to someone. At work, I'm a mental health first aider, and the first thing we do is we just want people to open up, and we just want to listen. And all it is about is listening to what someone has to say. And you're not trying to diagnose anything, you're just listening to signpost and say, actually, you know, you've opened up, you've made the biggest move is to tell someone, I feel this way. But yeah, there is a difference between having a sad day and being depressed. There's a massive difference.
I want to really hone in on that. Dan, I know you've actually mentioned things around this before. Do you know, like how people are feeling? Is it just a day? Is it actually a feeling? Is it something more? So how can someone try and identify whether or not it is a sad day or they're suffering with depression?
This is an interesting one because obviously I suffered with depression as well. That's where my whole sort of journey began. And for me, it's very, very hard when you're in it to know that you're in it. And I think that potentially could be a key differentiation. If, for example, you are posting and saying everywhere that you're feeling depressed, I don't believe you are depressed.
So that's what we see often on social media now, right?
That for me is you're having a down day and you're wanting people to make you feel better.
Affirmations.
Because if you're, and again, that's not all the time, so that's just me generally sort of speaking, because some people genuinely, if it's out of character, so for example, for me, I never post anything like that. If I just come out of the blue and post something like that, that might be a cry for help. But if I'm doing it every other week, then for me, it's like you're not really depressed, because if you're depressed, you don't really have the ability to want to call out. You're genuinely just functioning. Like you're not thinking about anything else or anyone else because you can't, because you're so insular and you're so inside your own head that you don't have the cognitive function to think, oh, I'm going to reach out and ask everyone on my Instagram for help, because then you're going to get bombarded with messages and you're not going to be in the headspace to actually read the messages, and you know you're not if you're actually depressed. Does that make sense? If you're having a down day, then you will want people to do that because it's going to make you feel better because you get to talk about it. And again, that talking may help you get out of that bad day. So it's a very, very fine line because people handle things differently. So it's very, very case dependent and how people deal with it. But genuinely speaking, if you actually are depressed, it's the ones that aren't talking about being depressed that are the ones that actually are depressed. No one would have had a clue that I was depressed. My own family didn't know until I actually started talking about it, like literally a couple of years ago. No one knew because I kept it so to myself. I wasn't out there telling everyone how I was feeling. Because
how did you get to that point where you did tell people then?
I literally only told someone that people I was depressed maybe a year and a half, 2 years after I got myself to a really good place, because I was almost ashamed. I was ashamed and like embarrassed to talk about it, because I still at that point didn't really understand it. I just knew that I wasn't okay. And I remember the dark days. Every single day I kept saying to myself, I'll snap out of it. I'll be fine, because again, I thought I was having bad days. But then I wasn't. I literally was not snapping out of it, and it wasn't getting any better. I just did not want to wake up. Like, I just wanted to be in bed. Just literally, that's all I wanted. I just wanted to literally be in bed and just be asleep. Like, just dream away the world, and then wake up and I'd feel better. But that didn't happen. So that's the difference between, I'm feeling a bit low today, because that's natural. Like you said before, I talk about this a lot. It's natural to feel sad. If someone that is close to you passes away, you're going to feel sad. You're going to be grieving. If you've had a long-term relationship breakup and someone you've been with for 10 years leaves you, you're going to feel sad. Are you depressed? Probably not. 3 months down the line you may be, but within that first month, you're just going to be grieving, and that's going to suck. And part of the grieving process can feel like depression, but it's just really low, and it sucks.
Can I just ask, sorry, Frisco, I'll come to you, like, when you were feeling that way, and it lasted a long time, where you just wanted to be asleep, and you didn't really want to wake up, and when you did, you just wanted to be in that state. Was there anything you had? Do you know? Because at the beginning of this, we talked about these studies of psychedelics and how they're helping people. Was there anything that could snap you out of it? Like, I know you don't drink now, but like going for a beer or doing something. The
only thing that got me out of it led me to an addiction, which involved someone of the opposite sex, let's put it that way. But that's the only thing that got me through it, and that's where the addiction came from, because I wasn't feeling anything. The only thing that I felt was when I was doing that activity. That's the only thing. And for me, look at how I receive love. It's physical touch, quality time, and words of affirmation. And doing that action with the opposite sex gave me all three of them, so I became addicted to that, because it's the only thing that made me feel anything. And it was literally this vicious cycle. Right.
This is, I think, one thing Dan's really touched on. It's a time frame as well. As in, you can be sad for a period of time, but when that period of time starts working out that it's weeks and then it's months and this is not changing, that's when you probably need to turn around and get some help. Because everyone has a sad day. As we say, we all have down days. 200 years ago, depression wasn't a thing. It was you're sad. But then when these days start merging in together, and you know there's no light. It's not like, I'm having an okay day today. I'm just sad today, and they start getting longer and longer. And the three things really that my opinion would be on depression is you've lost a sense of achievement, and that you're not achieving anything. You lost a sense of purpose, and you've lost a sense of belonging. So if you think about naturally in life, we crave to belong to something. We crave to have purpose in life, and we crave achievements and enjoyment. When you lose those three things, you could be looking at, you are depressed, because you don't feel like you belong, because possibly you don't feel you're good enough to belong. There's no enjoyment in anything, and you feel you've got no purpose. So, and as Dan said, that there's people that get to that stage where they can't get out of bed, but there's also people that have, and it's strange because some people say, well, my depression's really bad and it's worse than yours and blah, blah, blah. There's people who function absolutely super high achievers that suffer from depression. So if you look at some, artists that are famous, for having depression and anxiety, Robin Williams, one of the funniest men to ever walk the planet. When he went through his worst depression, he wrote his funniest stand-up. He performed his funniest stand-up. He made some of his greatest films. So I think there's this thing of sometimes people think, well, actually, if you're in bed and you can't get out, you're suffering from the worst depression. No, you might not be. That's just your depression. You may have someone else that's a CEO of a company that is running and making decisions and looks, as Dan says, on the surface, fine, but he's really, really going through some stuff inside and struggling, but still managing to, to form. But there's probably no enjoyment, there's no sense of purpose. You're just running through the mill, and you probably feel quite lonely, and, no one's around because you don't belong to anything.
But I don't think it's like with that necessary people comparing people's depression, because when you're depressed, I don't think you are looking at people who've got it worse than me, because you're so insular that you're not thinking about anyone else.
I like
so
that saying, your worst day is your worst day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So
it is,
everyone's version of depression is that. So I don't think anyone's going to be like, oh, well, this person's got it worse than me. I think it's just a case of you're so self-involved about yourself, because again, let's say everyone knows the potential dangerous outcome of depression. No one ever does that thinking in the right mind, because you're not in the right frame of mind. That's the only thing you can see, and that's the only way I can really describe it is it's like if you've got like blinkers on of a horse, you can only see one thing. So I'm not sat there thinking, oh well, the CEO's my best guy that like Mikey, let's say, is like, oh I know Mikey, like he's running this big company and he's depressed, so I must not be as bad as him.
No, let me just clarify what I said there. I didn't know that's maybe I've articulated that incorrectly. What I'm saying is that sometimes people look at people that are depressed.
It looks different in different people.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying.
So if you're looking at two people and you're seeing one that is calling in work and says, I cannot get out of bed because I'm having an episode, but then you've got someone who's highly functioning, some people look at those and think, well, actually, clearly yours is worse because you can't get out of bed. That's not necessarily the case.
It different.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify.
How you feeling inside might be, unbelievable. However, you still function because there are people around that you need to rely on. It's like people that are, get to the stage where they're alcoholics. Some of the worst alcoholics still hold down incredibly technical, high positions. Why? Because it's the only way they can survive to be able to drink, because they work to fulfill this habit. So I think sometimes society looks at these things and thinks if you're the alcoholic in the street, you're the worst. People deal with things differently, and it doesn't mean someone's pain is worse because they are not functioning. It just means that's how they are at that point.
I knew exactly what you meant. I wanted to clarify that, because you're listening to someone that's feeling depressed. I don't want to be like, well, maybe I'm not that depressed, when then it kind of invalidates how they're feeling. But I knew what you were saying.
It's how you cope, isn't it? At the end of the day, it's your strategy. When we did the mental health first aid training, we spoke about suicide, and they speak about self-harm, and why people do it, and some of these are coping mechanisms. When they start talking about suicide, and because it's funny, people think when you ring organisations, and if you've got suicidal thoughts, the first thing they're going to do is try and talk you out of it. Now the first thing you do is don't try and talk someone out of it, because to say to someone, oh, life's not that bad, you're talking to someone who is in the frame of mind, as Dan says, that life's bad. It's like people saying, don't worry about it. That's easy to say, but you're not in my position. So it's always about listening, trying to understand, and let someone just have their freedom to have their moment if they're speaking to you. It's not about advice. It's not about saying, I understand, I know how you feel, because maybe you don't. It's just about saying, tell me more. Try and get me to really understand.
I love the fact you said that, because that little notion where someone's saying anything and they go, I know how you feel. It's almost like one of the worst things you can say to anyone. Look, what I'm going to do is play some music, and we're going to go back to this because it's really fascinating. There's a couple of points I really want to pick up on the back of some music from Sigala, and there's some Lost Frequencies and Callum Scott. So we went from sad days and depression, and differentiating the two, right, and trying to work out what they are. But what I found really fascinating, and one of the points I believe you said, Dan, was when someone is really depressed and when someone's going through depression, the last thing they want to do is actually look outside and look at other people. However, we live in a world where anxiety is going through the roof, where a lot of people that can be suffering with anxiety or be anxious actually get that way because they're looking at other people online and they believe that drives their depression. And there's a lot to go up. I'm going to play some music.
Frequencies and Callum Scott, Where Are You Now? You're listening to Daniel James on BBC Radio 1. Aaron's just currently
Radio
eating.
1, come on, mate. You were doing so well.
I'm manifesting. BBC Radio Nottingham. I'm manifesting. I'm manifesting the future. When we're on BBC Radio 1, you'll be like, oh, Daniel predicted this.
Well played, Dan.
You're welcome.
That was really good, actually. So that...
half of it.
That's how you do it. That's how you kind of do it right.
You got 9.5.
Listen, I'm manifesting this, you guys. I believe. You got to believe.
Right, okay.
Futurising.
Wait, hold on. Simmer down now. Give me my
happy
job
with
back.
Nottingham.
Give me my job back. Right, okay. That was Dan James. He's from the Prime Life podcast.
Yeah.
He's part of the Circle of Men.
I'm buzzing
Alongside
after that,
Frisco Boogie. And alongside Rhythmical Mike. We were just interrupted by television because they wanted to do more work with Mikey. What's this about?
Something in the water down here,
you said
mate.
at the beginning of this, you know what? You just haven't got time for this anymore. Autographs, people asking you to do more, and that's exactly what's happening.
I heard you came up and said there's like an audience outside that are demanding to speak to Mikey, like autographs and all stuff.
But he's got such a good face for radio.
Yeah, he does.
I worry about you on television. Did they put makeup on you?
No makeup. Dan does wear makeup for his podcast, though.
100%. Matt, I own it.
He
It's all right,
does
I own it.
What is it, Matt?
Yeah, Matt, yeah. It stops the
doesn't
shine, my
shine.
shiny forehead. It's okay.
I should put it on my whole head.
I can't believe
That'd be
you didn't
fine.
offer me any when I was doing the podcast.
Listen,
it
you
was a
can't-
sunny day. You wanted to make me shine. I like it.
How do
We'll leave it there.
how do you make perfection better?
Shine.
Aaron, how do you make perfection better?
You can't. You let me
You-
shine.
yeah, that's it,
What?
mate.
You're missing the pun every time.
Emanates.
I'm choosing to ignore it because it wasn't that great.
Okay, let me shine. Right, okay.
You need to polish
So-
up your act.
Oh.
On the banter bus.
Frisco Boogie, the problem with him using
the
this,
tone.
Matt, is it wouldn't just go on his face. It'd have to go the whole head and stop it all shining. Hey, Leclerc?
We can't do that because Mikey's part of that as well, so it's like you can't.
Brontosaurus Rex over here. Yeah, it's real. The struggle's
Oh my,
real.
I didn't realise you
I
were
said the same thing! I said the same thing, I didn't
Right, hold
realise!
on, simmer down. We're
Right.
on radio.
This is what the episode's about now.
No, it's not. Right, we started, when we started this discussion today, we talked about sad days and depression, okay, and trying to differentiate the two between sad days and depression, and it was a really fascinating conversation. Dan opened up, he was really honest about him suffering with depression and how it's different, but there was something that came up that I found really fascinating, where, Dan, you said, when you're depressed, the last thing you want to do is kind of put it out there to the world or kind of have other people getting involved. However, we live in a world of social media, good or bad. It is what it is. Any more of those like cliches you can throw in, but it is there. So social media, we see people talk about anxiety and depression. We see people talk about it as one, which is wrong to start with.
Yep.
Very wrong. We see people talk about feeling anxious and anxiety clumped together, which again, from what I've read, what I understand is wrong. But when someone feels anxious, they often feel anxious because of what they've seen on social media. But they often say that they're feeling depressed because of what they've seen on social media. When, in essence, if someone was depressed, they wouldn't feel that way. Can someone help me out with where my head's going and what I'm trying to
I think
get at here?
let's Mikey chime in on this because we've gone 36 minutes. I've not heard Mikey talk.
I'm enjoying today,
Really?
mate. I'm
Oh.
fully
I don't want you to be a bystander because I just want to. I don't want to just keep
No,
going because
mate.
I've got views on this.
We're a collective. I'm just part of the team.
Help me out here then. Well, you
Can I-
understand what I'm trying to say
Yeah,
here?
100%.
I can
when you
join
look at
in
the
with
two,
this.
the way I look at it is anxiety is apprehension for the future. It's about things that haven't happened, and depression is kind of lamenting on the past, reliving things, reliving emotions, things that have happened to you, dwelling on them. So they are two separate things, but you're right. People say, I'm suffering from anxiety and depression. Well, actually, some people do suffer from both together. Fine. But there's a lot of people that suffer from one or the other. Social media is interesting because it is that absolute double-edged sword. In this day and age, it's fantastic for some things, but there is this kind of social media persona that people portray. And one of my absolute bugbears is when you know people who are, I wouldn't say going through a bad time, just not as happy as they portray on social media. And then other people
That's
say,
everyone, is it not?
no, there's some people that are very honest on social media, too honest on social media, because, sometimes I think you could question that. But it's when you see people and everything on their social media is a quote, it's this, and then you
those
meet
people.
them and you think, do you know what? You would do more good if you were actually real on social media, because people would see that you are actually living your true life, not trying to live up to something or portray something that doesn't exist. It used to be about money and, about what you owned. Now it seems to be on social media a lot about, how conscious you are or how motivated you are or various things. And then you meet people and you think, well, actually, you are the total opposite from that. I'd rather have somebody turn around and say, I'm having a bad day today, and, but this is what I'm going to try and do to get out of it. Or the even worse one. The headline says having a bad day, and then no one says what it's about, so everyone inboxes. And it's that one. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, I'm having a bad day. Yeah, inbox me. Well, what? Just, sometimes just stay off social media. Have a blackout period where you don't go on social media. If you want to really help your mental health,
Go
cut
do
out
some exercise. Go do a walk
get
without all of that.
outside, be present in time. Because if depression's about it, this is just my opinion, I'm going to put that caveat again. If depression's mainly about the past and anxiety is about the future, the way to avoid this is to be present in the moment. Because if you're present in the moment, you're not thinking about tomorrow and you're not thinking about yesterday, you're thinking about now. That's why when people try and meditate and get to the stage where they are thinking, letting thoughts come in and just flow and just, there in the moment, you can't worry about something. And you can't think about the past if you live in the moment. But it's incredibly difficult to do for a lot of people to actually live in the present when you think about it. And it's interesting what Dan said about the partner thing. And people say, sometimes the true living in the moment is when people are having coitus, because that's the only thing that's happening and in someone's mind at that point. So that's about really being present with this moment in time.
I think it's hard though when you're, again, like going back to what I said earlier on, when you're in that headspace. I'm going to link it back to your question now and originally asked as well about the anxiety thing. But I think it's really hard when you're, again, in that headspace and you're depressed. Do you have someone turn around to me and said, you need to be more present in the moment? Even though I knew how to meditate, I've been to meditation courses, done a mindfulness class. It's very hard to do it when you're stuck in that negative thought pattern, because what happens is, especially if you're there, again, quietening your mind, your natural default will be to go to this natural default, which will be depressive tendencies or anxious tendencies. So to ask your question about the anxiety stuff, anxiety and depression do tend to come hand in hand, because what tends to happen is if you're getting anxious about something, you can then become depressed about the fact you're anxious, because being anxious, if you've ever been anxious, it's horrific. Like I've never suffered with anxiety, but I've been extremely anxious.
Yeah.
And what ends up happening, imagine being in that constant state and not knowing what's controlling it. That can then lead to depression, because you then don't want to do anything to then trigger it. So then it becomes this vicious cycle, because then you become anxious about everything, but then it then causes you to be depressed.
Yeah.
So you're stuck in this constant vicious cycle of anxiety and depression. So they do go hand in hand. Like, so people, when you say people have anxiety and depression, they normally do have anxiety and depression, because it's not necessarily that, because Frisco's right there, like depression is normally characterized by stuff that's in the past, but you can also be depressed because you just feel horrific, because you are living in constant fear of, I don't know when I'm going to feel anxious again. And that feeling of being anxious is so extreme.
It makes about being anxious.
But then leads to depression. So you genuinely are anxious and depressed.
Do you know what? That's so mad, because I've never thought about the concept, of getting anxious, about feeling anxious, because I can say safely, I think a lot of people in the world can, a lot of people can't, and you're lucky. You've ever had like an anxiety attack and you've had something come on. It is one of the most horrific feelings, where you feel just an utter loss of control of everything. You're going, and I remember just like getting really hot, really like sort of short breath, and just being like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And then you start sitting there going, there's nothing I can do. And every thought possible goes through your head in a really short space of time. And it's really weird when you come out the other side and you do look back on that and you go, my God, I'll do anything to not go back to that phase. Thankfully, in my life, I've had two. And I haven't been near to one in years and years. So I know that's very fortunate.
You can do things about that you grounding. There are things that you can trigger where, you look for 10 things that are the same colour, 10 things that are the same, shape. You feel your fingers, feel your feet on the ground.
But that's a great way of being able to manage something by understanding, but also managing it. Do you know what? It's one of those things that, and I really mean this, it's a lot easier said than done.
Because,
do you know what I mean? Someone starts going 10 things, and by the time they get to the third, they go, ooh.
But then you get anxious about the fact you can't think of 10 things. So it adds the thing again.
All these things are easier said than done at the end of the day.
But they're great tools to have in your armoury to be able to try and develop.
Coping mechanism.
I know full well now, if I start to feel a certain way, even just a little bit down or anything like that, I get myself to the gym. Just 100% get in the gym. And the thing that I've noticed about that is it's not always just about being in that gym or working out. It's about the environment. It's actually about having my headphones on, having a playlist on, not checking my phone, not looking for other things. Being present, music on, and then like seeing people, having real life conversations with those people in the gym where no one cares about kind of like outside stuff. Everyone's like, you all right? You good? How's training? Things like that. You are so present because you're talking about right now. You can't say, I've just had a beast of a session when you're looking tiny. Do you know what I mean? That's lying. You can't be present in the gym, and they can say. Mikey, Dan said this, and I think this is the pleasure of, or the great thing about doing something like Circle of Men. We do this every week collectively, and it's not about going, right, you say something, then Frisco, you say something, and Dan says something. We do this collectively. Sometimes, like some of us have more to say and others, but I just want to ask you about like let's just move it on a bit. So like depression, is that something? We're gonna do a quick fire sort of lot around, and then we'll get into it. Have you ever suffered with depression?
Very heavily, yes.
Anxiety?
Heavily, yes.
Okay. Sad days?
Deeply.
How often? These days?
Do I have them now? Very little.
Okay.
Very, very little.
How often do you feel anxious these days?
Very little.
How often are you depressed these days?
Very little.
Okay.
Yeah, truthfully.
So, yeah, right, and the reason I wanted to come to that at the end is, or like comment at this point is, proof, and we like real life proof, right? Now, as Frisco has said numerous times, we're not experts, we don't know everything. These are opinions, these are what we think, but Frisco, you have experience in doing certain things. You are qualified in certain areas. Mikey, Dan, you do things to actually help people, and this is like part and parcel of your life. I try and facilitate these conversations so we can do something good here. But your journey, we have not got time to go all the way through your journey. But if there's one thing, not that thing, but one thing that has been kind of key to like unlocking you now being present, being happy, getting things like your business off the ground, having things like this television opportunity, being on radio, where it just seems like, no, but genuinely, you just seem to be in a great place, your family's in a great place, your little ones are right there. So like, yeah, what's been like probably the biggest key to that?
So, yeah, I built this reality. It was from a moment of madness. It led to a lot of turmoil and struggle. But I think the biggest thing was life is, for me, meaningless, completely meaningless. And I had to find meaning within it. So I think a lot of people, when we think of suicide, a lot of people will say, well, I could never do it. And then you say, why? And they say, because of the hurt that's going to cause for X, Y, and Z. And that, for me, I had that thought, but it wasn't a big enough reason to go on still. And for me, what we need to try and do is get people wanting to live for an optimal state, an optimal theory of living. Because all you're going to create then, if you have kids, is kids that are fearful of not wanting to end anything, or people that don't want to end their life out of fear still. It's all a fear-based response of not hurting other people. It's not a strong enough reason to go on. The stronger reason to go on, the most optimal reason to go on, is building a theory of making your life with meaning. And that's what I found through my exploration, through many reasons. And then I found a pivotal moment of poetry, discovered a passion, and that got me on a journey of meeting amazing people. And then I saw what that could do for me. I was excited, I was waking up ready to write, ready to discover, ready to meet more people. And then I just loved life. I was thirsty for life, and I felt that was my reason to go on. So I think what I believe is we need to create people with optimal theories and reasons for living.
I love that.
Love that.
Absolutely love that. I think that's an appropriate time to go to a song before our final part. And the final part of tonight's Circle of Men, I'm going to do something we did a couple of times beforehand, but we've talked about depression, we've talked about anxiety, we've talked about living in the present. Frisco, Rhythmical Mike, and Dan are each going to give you one tip to trying to be a bit more present over the coming days. Big energy on BBC Radio Nottingham. Arun with you this Thursday night. As always on a Thursday, we're doing the Circle of Men, joined by Dan from the Prime Life Project podcast, Frisco Boogie, who's got an album out right now, and Rhythmical Mike, who has turned into an international regional TV star. So final part of tonight's Circle of Men, and the reason for this is we do a Circle of Men, so hopefully we can impact someone's life. Someone, that's it. All that matters is trying to put some good out there, trying to have the conversations that potentially are a little bit too difficult to have, sort of conversations that a few years ago I would not have, and it's still a lot of the conversations I wouldn't have with a lot of my mates. So I think it's fantastic what we do, and I wholly encourage anyone that has any interest in this, keep reading, keep learning, keep developing, because every single day is a school day. Final bit of tonight, we've talked about sad days, the difference between sad days and depression. We talked about anxiety and depression, and we talked about when you're depressed, you can sometimes be insular and you don't want to see other people online. We talked about anxiety can be caused by what you see online. And then we said living in the present. And what I loved what you said, Frisco, where you said, right, okay, just be in the present, because depression can sometimes, a lot of the time, be about things that have happened, and anxiety can quite often be about things in the future. So if we can ground ourselves, be present, we can not think about any of those thoughts, and it can help. This isn't a cure, this isn't 100% like on all the time, but it's a great way to start if you're feeling either anxious or depressed or a bit sad, just to ground yourself. So Mikey, top tip on grounding.
Grounding yourself. I mean, my
this
best
is the
piece
snappy
of,
bit of the show.
Okay, my best piece of advice for getting people to be truly present in the moment, and I think the Chinese call it wu wei, we call it flow, but
Flow
you
state.
do have a thing. I'm 100% sure everybody's got a calling and they've got a thing out there. Particularly at the minute, mine's videography. I'm really into it, and I can start at 7 p.m. and suddenly I look at the time and it's 3 a.m. and I've just been in that state of flow and I can't actually believe it, where time becomes non-existent. So I believe that's one of the greatest ways of doing it, but don't get addicted to it, because you need to find that peace and that present in the moment in all parts of your life, which I'm sure these guys are going to help you with as well in some advice.
I love that flow state, and it's something that's really important. Do you know what your flow state is, Frisco?
I don't know. Creativity, probably, a lot of the time.
Yeah, writing, rhyming.
Yeah, writing, painting, just anything kind of hip hop related. I think what Mike said, one thing for me is happiness is not a destination. We're all going to have a bad day at one point. Everyone. No one has 100% good days, because if you have 100% good days, you can't appreciate it. You have to go down.
Well, so lying, aren't you? Come
no,
on,
but you have to be you have to have a sad day at times just to feel those peaks. But life, and as I say, happiness is not the kind of destination. It's the journey there. You don't think, when I'm happy I'll do it. Focus on trying to be present. And as Dan said, these things are not easy to do. However, you can do them, but it might just take time. And at one point, you might look back and go, oh, wow, look where I was and look where I am now. So it's that journey. Just, try and enjoy your journey if you can do.
Love that. Dan?
Flow state or...
No.
Just 2 questions. Which one are we going for?
Being present. Some advice for it.
For me, being present, I would say journaling is a good thing, because that really allows you to be present in the moment. Because if you do journaling correctly, and I just get my clients, a really basic thing is, today I'm feeling, and then just free write. So set a timer, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. The one rule is you can't let the pen stop moving. Because what happens is your conscious brain turns off. You can't consciously think that fast. So then your subconscious will start talking. So then literally you will get into a flow state and you'll be present writing. And then what you'll actually find is, oh, that's how I'm feeling. Because what will happen is your subconscious will just splurt onto the page, and you started off talking about how you're feeling, and then you'll actually get down to something really weird that's bothering you that you didn't know was bothering you. So that's a big thing for me. If you need to feel present, writing is a big thing. By the way, I'm not a good writer. This isn't something I'm amazing at, but it's something I get all my clients to do. It's a non-negotiable. All my clients have to. They have to journal every day, either in the morning or in the evening, or both. That's a really key thing. And before you ask me, my flow state is speaking. Like public speaking, talking to clients. That is me in my flow state all day long. Like that is a bit of me, and time just melts away.
I love that. Do you know journaling as well? When I first started doing it, I remember just as I was doing it, going, oh, this will make a great book. Yeah, in a really mad way. I've often thought about going back to it, going, could you write a book or anything like that? And it could be a great creative outlet. Someone might
say that everyone's got one book inside them. Yeah, so everyone's got at least one book inside them.
What would you call yours, Aaron? What would your book be called?
Warwood Drive.
That is a great question, Aaron. What would yours be called?
Barcelona. Viva la Barça.
I don't know.
I thought he was being artistic then and just leaving it with silence. It'd be a blank page.
Maybe it still is.
Oh, maybe it still is.
There you go.
Wow.
That's it.
I think that's what it's called, with a question mark.
Right, we're giving you 3 weeks to write that, Aaron. We've got manuscripts.
To be continued.
Yeah.
TBC.
And that has been Circle of Men on the BBC Radio Nottingham.
Oh, now you're finishing it.
No,
Right,
we've got the
Matt.
news. We've got the news. Got news
No,
first.
there's a song first as well. Come on, guys. Right, stop this. Right, okay. If anyone wants to find out more about you, Dan, where do they go?
Podcast is the Promenade Project Podcast on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcast, and Instagram is Daniel_James_fitness.
Frisco?
Okay, all the Friscos. However, Saturday night at the Theatre Royal, Unite the Scene big dance show I'm hosting. Please come down. £5 a ticket. It's going to be amazing. It's 10-year anniversary this year.
Amazing. I love that. Okay, Mikey.
Rhythmical Mike, camera Mike action, the old farm boss.